path by which I may come down and speak to you. I found a steep, rough, descending path notched out, which I followed. When I came down low enough so I could see him again, he was standing between the rails with such expectation and watchfulness that I had to stop a moment to wonder at it. His post was in as solitary and dismal a place as ever I saw, surrounded by dripping wet walls of jagged stone, excluding all but a strip of sky. So little sunlight ever reached this spot that had an earthy, deadly smell, and so much cold wind blew through that it struck chill to me, as though I had left the natural world. I don't suppose you get very many visitors here, do you? I do hope I'm not intruding.
You know you are.
You look at me as though you had a dread of me.
I was doubtful whether I'd seen you before.
Where? There?
Yes.
My good fellow, I've never been here before, I swear.
Change that switch, trim those lights, and turn this iron handle now and then. Let me ask you a question. What made you cry, "Hello, below there," tonight?
Because I saw you below.
No. What made you choose those words, "Hello, below there"?
I cried something to that effect.
No! Not to that effect, sir. Those were the very words. I know them well.
Heaven knows
No particular reason.
What reason could I possibly have?
You had no feeling that they were conveyed to you in any supernatural way?
No.
When I saw you tonight, I took you for someone else.
Having been orphaned in our childhood, my brother Henry and I were brought up by an aunt.
Having no one else to rely on, we became very strongly attached.
Our days were filled with light and laughter.
We found a true friend in each other.
At the age of 22, my brother received some news.
I received my appointment to India today.
You did? Oh, Henry.
What's wrong?
I know I should be happy for you, but
It won't be forever.
I corresponded with him regularly, and my brightest days in all the year were those which brought letters from India. One cold winter's day, when I was seated at work near the fire, some strange impulse caused me to raise my head and look around. Henry, you never told me you were coming!
Don't. Please.
Your hand is icy cold. It makes me shiver.
Do you remember our agreement? I've come to fulfill it.
My brother smiled a sad, faint smile and turned and left the room. My blood turned to ice, for we had agreed that if either should die before my brother's return, the dead should appear to the living. I looked down and discovered there was a mark on my wrist, which never left to my dying day.
Trial began.
The next mail from India
Evidence
brought a
had
letter
been taken for 2 hours when I looked over the jury and found an inexplicable difficulty in counting them. I counted them several times, yet always with the same difficulty. Oblige me by counting us.
Why, we are 30. No. We are 12.
According to my counting that day, we were always correct in the detail, but in the gross, we were always one too many. And yet there was no appearance, no figure to account for it. We all slept in one large room.
They were constantly in the charge and under the watchful eye of myself. The officer sworn to hold them in safe keeping. When they turned into their 12 beds at night, I drew my bed across the door.
On the second night, being restless and seeing the officer sitting on his bed, I offered him a pinch of snuff. Would you like some?
No, don't mind if I do. Thanks, Governor. Wait, who's that?
Who are you talking about? Looking along the room, I saw the ghost.
Thought for a moment we had a 13th juryman. Without a bed. But I see it was only the moonlight.
As the officer and I conversed, I watched the ghost intently. It stood for a moment by the bedside of each of the 11 jurymen. It paid no notice of me. And then it seemed to go out where the moonlight came in, through a high window. The next morning, it seemed that everyone there had dreamt about the murdered man, except for myself and the officer.
Rotten set of chambers that had been locked up and empty for years and years before. But there were a lot of old women's stories about the place, and it was very far from being cheerful. But I wasn't very successful, and the rooms were very cheap. That would have been a sufficient reason if the rooms were actually 10 times worse than they actually were. I was obliged to take in some moldering fixtures that were among the place, among which was a great lumbering wooden cabinet for papers, with large glass doors and a green curtain inside. A completely useless thing for me, for I have no papers to put in it. And as to my clothes, I carried them around with me, and that wasn't very much hard work either. So I moved in all my furniture and tried to make my 4 chairs look as much like a dozen as possible. And I was sitting down at the fire at night, drinking the first glass of 2 gallons of whiskey that I ordered on credit, wondering whether it would ever be paid for, and if so, in how many years' time. When all of a sudden my eyes encountered the glass doors of the wooden cabinet. Oh, I tell you what, old fellow, I have a strong mind to break up your old carcass and have a good fire out of you. Who are you?
Don't throw that poker at me, for if you do, it will only pass through me without resistance. For I am the ghost of Richard James.
And pray, what do you want here?
In this room, my